Hi guys, I'm sorry that I'm not here today, but I am in fact going to be recording the quiz corrections for you to make on your own paper. Some of you may have gotten the correct answers on these problems, but did not show me any work. And so without the work, it was really hard for me to know whether you guessed or actually knew what you were doing. So I didn't give you credit without the work, so I am going to in fact ask that you go back now and correct anything or add anything to it so you fully understand what you need to do for the retake that will take place on Friday. So we will have the retake on both of these on Friday during class. So no need to come after school or before school. We'll do it during class just on quadrilaterals and polygons. So let's start with number one. Number one has a keyword of rectangle, and in a rectangle we know that we have a 90-degree angle. We also know that I have a triangle now where I have three angles labeled. So what I'm looking for in this case is to write an equation, and this is the part that a lot of you did not do. I'm looking for an equation that all three angles, 2x plus 4, plus 62 plus the 90-degree angle is equal to 180. So really without some form of this equation, I really wasn't sure whether you really knew what you were doing or again just guessing. So what I'd like for you to do at this point is to go ahead and combine all of our like terms. So we're going to add the 4, the 62, and the 90. And when we do that, we get 156. And then we're going to subtract 156 from both sides of the equation. And I get 24. We'll divide by 2, and I get that x is equal to 12. Well, we always have to double check that the equation, that the question that's being asked is in fact x. Luckily for us, it's asking for the value of x, so the correct answer should have been A. But again, some of you just wrote A without telling me how you got it. So I'm really interested that you write this equation down. At this point, if you need to pause the recording so that you can go ahead and finish copying this down, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we're going to go on to question 2. Question 2, there really wasn't a lot of work, so either you got it right or wrong. I didn't give any, you didn't have to show me anything. But it is talking about what shape must have opposite sides parallel and congruent. Well, anything that's opposite sides are parallel and congruent is going to be opposite sides parallel looks like this. And congruent means that they're all the same length. Well, that's really any parallelogram at all. So I can cross off trapezoid. Any parallelogram at all, that's true. But now we're going to add some interesting information. Now we're going to add that the diagonals are perpendicular bisectors. Ooh, the diagonals are perpendicular. Well, we should know that in a rhombus, the diagonals are perpendicular. So really there wasn't a whole lot of work there. It was just knowing your properties. Let's go on to question 3. Question 3, very few people actually wrote down what I was looking for. Several of you went ahead and drew a picture, which was great. We have a square, and I have that a diagonal is 14. I love it. We're trying to find the length of a side. Well, in this case, I do have a right triangle. And I know that in a square, the sides are the same. When I have a right triangle, when I'm looking about all of the sides, not angles and sides, but just sides, well, that's Pythagorean theorem. So a lot of people didn't write this equation down, which again is something that I'm looking for. We're going to combine like terms. $14 squared is 196. And then in order to solve this, I need to divide both sides by 2. When I divide both sides by 2, I get 196 divided by 2, and I should get 98. And when I have x squared is equal to 98, in order to solve this for x, we have to take the square root of both sides, and the square root of 98 is approximately 9.9. Now, if I look at my answer choices, I don't see anything that says 9.9. So what I want you to do is I want you to check all of your answer choices and just plug them into your calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 7 square roots of 2. Oh, happens to be the first answer that we chose. But without the work shown, you didn't tell me enough that you knew how to solve this equation. So let's go ahead and go on to question number 4. So problem number 4, we have a pattern for a quilt. And a lot of you went ahead and wrote in the angle measures that are given to us. So I have that angle ABC is 120, ADC is 2x plus 30, and that BCD was x. So several of you wrote that in the picture. That's awesome, but we still have to write an equation for x. So if we look at this little portion where all the angles are filled in, I have a quadrilateral, a 4-sided figure. And the sum inside any polygon is 180 times n minus 2. When I plug in a 4, I get 180 times 2, which is 360, which means all of the angles on the inside need to be 360. So the equation that I'm going to write is that 360 equals 120 plus x plus 2x plus 30 plus 90 is equal to 360. So all 4 of those angles added together is equal to 360. We'll go ahead and combine our like terms. And so I get 3x plus, and then I'll need to add the 120, the 30, and the 90, and I should get 240 is equal to 360. Then I'm going to go ahead and subtract 240. And you should get 120 is equal to 3x. And we'll go ahead and divide by 3. Well, great. I have x is 40. Looking at my answer choices, I don't see 40. And honestly, that's a good thing because that's not the question. The question is, what's the measure of angle DCE? Well, if I look at this, I have x and then I have DCE. Well, these two angles should add up to 180. So if I know that x is 40, then I know that this should be 140 because they should add up to 180. Okay. So quite a lot of information that I was looking for here. So you didn't get credit on this question if you didn't solve for x. So I'm looking for the equation. So again, if you need some time to write this down, feel free to pause the recording and go ahead and start it back up when we're ready to move on to polygons. So on the next page of your quiz, you should have polygons. And we have some formulas that we know about polygons. We are trying to find the sum. And we know that the sum formula for any polygon is this. Now we just have to figure out how many sides. If I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertices, that means there are 5 sides. So 180 times 3 is in fact 540. So quite a few of you got this one right, but did not show the work. So this is the work that I was looking for problem number 1. Again, if you need to pause the recording, feel free to do so. And we're ready to go ahead and talk about problem number 2. Problem number 2, if you are in our remediation class, is one that we did before. But we really want to think about trying to find the measure of angle JKL. And I'm going to highlight JKL out here with a blue circle. And if we look, we have these two angles as well. If we want, we can see that all 3 of those angles kind of fit together perfectly. And they know that all of those should add up to be 360. It's like these 3 shapes that are shoved together, pushed together without any gaps. So if I can find the yellow angles, then I can just subtract those from 360 and I'll find the angle I'm looking for, angle JKL. So let's start with the angle inside the triangle. What kind of a triangle are we looking at? Well, we're looking at an equilateral triangle. And I know that 180 divided by 3 is 60. So all of those angles inside the triangle should be 60. So I've got one of them. Now I need to find the other angle. It's inside a regular nonagon. Nonagon has 9 sides. And if we remember that we can find the exterior angle first, then we can find the interior angle. The exterior angle is found by taking 360 divided by the number of sides. Well, that gives me the exterior angle, but if you look at how an exterior and interior angle are related, I can simply subtract those from 180 because they're a linear pair. So that angle for inside a regular nonagon, go ahead and plug this into your calculator, and you should get 140, which means this guy right here is 140. Okay, again, we're looking at the 3 angles that I've kind of drawn a circle around on the other side. So what I'm looking for here is that I know that those 3 angles should add up to 360. So if I subtract them from 360, what I have left is 160. So angle JKL is, in fact, 160 degrees. So again, without work, it was really hard for me to know who really understood it and who maybe really wasn't sure. Okay? And don't forget that this right here helps you find the exterior angle, and this whole thing, 1 exterior, and this whole thing is 1 interior. Okay? They add up to 180. All right, let's go ahead and move on to question 3. In question 3, we're trying to find the measure of angle U. Well, I can see that U and V have the same measure. I can see that Z and W are 90. And I can see that X and Y are 150. That still doesn't give me U. How many sides does U have? In other words, what should the sum be? Well, that's my formula. Because it has 6 sides, we're going to plug in a 6. And then I have 180 times 4, and you should get 540. So I know that if I take 540 and I subtract 90, 150, 150, and 90, I should get, I think, 240. Let's double check. Let's plug it into our calculators. I'm sorry. I get, whoa. Is it 540? 180 times 4. Oh, goodness gracious, guys. This is 720, not 540. Miss Macro, you got to do your math. So this would be 720. We're subtracting those from 720. So when I subtract 90, 150, 150, and 90, I get 240 left. So that tells me that this angle and this angle together should be 240. Well, since they're the same, if I divide by 2, each of the angles should be 120. Again, if you didn't tell me that you knew the sum was 720 and you didn't show me the work, it was hard for me to know what you truly did understand. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and do the last problem on these quizzes. And then we will, you'll work on, and again, don't forget the retake is going to be Thursday, Friday, depending on which class you have, the next class. And then you'll work for the rest of the class on surface area, volume, and logic. Okay, so what I have here is I have an isosceles trapezoid and a regular octagon. Let's find the inside of the octagon first. Again, 360 divided by 8, and we'll subtract that from 180. So 360 divided by 8, and then when I subtract that from 180, I should get 135. So the inside of the octagon is 135. Remembering that we're trying to find these three angles. We're trying to find this angle and this angle, and then that will help us find x. So I know that the inside of the octagon is 135. Now I have to find the inside of the trapezoid. Because I have the top and the bottom of the trapezoid as parallel lines, when I have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, I know that these two angles should add up to 180. So I know that this guy right here is 125. So to find x, I'm simply going to take 360, again, all the angles in the circle, and subtract the two that I already know. And when you do that, you should get 100. So that's what x is. What is the value of x? So you're going to keep these quizzes and you're going to turn them, you're going to study them, and you're going to take the quiz next class.